live. Ooh. Hello, hello. It's Sunday. Not quite time to start. Couple minutes, trying to chill out before we get started. Daylight savings, we get an extra hour of daylight tonight. I'm so excited. Hi, Dave. My husband Dave joined. We have so much to do today. I don't get nervous doing these because I'm nervous talking to you. I get nervous because we have so much to do. So much to talk about. It's one of my favorite songs. It's called Tilted. Because I think I'm tilted. I'm tilted a little bit, and I think a lot of people feel tilted. I don't want anybody to miss anything, so I hate saying anything that people will miss. And for some of you, you're just going to be on here for a few minutes. You can always catch this on repeat on YT. It's still the weekend until it's not. I am good. I am really good. I can finally say that. Sometimes it's a long haul, but I'm feeling good. It is noon, Sunday, live. All right, well, we have about 2 hours. I always go over, but I'm trying to keep it a little bit tighter so that I can edit the videos a little more quickly. So this is the PoP Baking Club, and we meet twice a week live on Wednesdays to introduce a recipe. I do a lecture and demo live, and then I come back on Sundays and we talk about it. So I don't know if you made the recipe, but it doesn't matter because I offer the recipe on the link tree so you can print it out and keep it for future. If you miss any of the lives, you can watch them on YouTube. Part 1 is Wednesday, part 2 is Sunday, and they will follow this format, which will make it easier for you to keep up in terms of not losing your place or not feeling like you can be included, because all of the information that I give in general is going to layer on to the next time, and it's going to come together that way. I go back and look at all of your comments later, so if I briefly comment and I say something, don't worry, I will catch it next time, and then I make a list of things that you asked about that we didn't get to, and I'll try to get to them this time. I do live streams twice a week. I used to be a baking and pastry arts teacher at the college level, and I have really found my footing here on TikTok in terms of making videos and being able to teach edutainment, educational videos, but that are quick, easy to absorb. But oftentimes the concepts are really big. So you have to go back to playlists, you have to layer in the information. And since I decided to make the move to doing lives, we just started doing this baking club. So every week I suggest some recipes, and then you guys are going to pick the recipes for the next week. So toward the end of today's live, I will do a poll. So during this live, if you can suggest recipes you want to do for next week, I would love that. I'm going to throw out a couple ideas, and I'm going to tell you why. Pâte à choux, which is like cream puffs, gougères, you can make profiteroles with them. It's pâte à choux filled with, and I thought it would be fun to do a crumb, which is a gelatin-based filling, kind of like a mousseline, but it's gelatin based. They have to be methods, and what I've done so far is offered you the creaming method with a melted butter. I've offered with the lemon pound cake a ribbon egg, which is an egg foam, but also on the machine. And then we did the blondie, which is the creaming method, but we also used melted butter. So there are all these concepts that work together, and basic baking isn't always just simple and easy. Basically on Sundays, we pick our recipe. I drop the recipe on Mondays in my link tree and with the video. And that way you can start to either gather ingredients, tools, things that you need. And then on Wednesdays, I present it. On Thursdays, I will drop a video of the work that I do here, giving you the full scope of it. Meanwhile, in between, I can drop videos of the things that support the recipe. So this week, we did the lemon pound cake. I did a video about the simple syrup glaze, and twice actually. These recipes have other aspects of them that make them interesting. You can have components that go along with them, or techniques in the mixing method, or ingredient function. So that's kind of what we'll be doing. So that's the practice of pastry, which is learning through doing things the best that you can, a little bit every day, over time getting better, working at the top of your game in terms of best practices, so that you build a really strong practice over time, because I want you to learn how to do these things, and I want you to learn how to think like a baker. In other words, we never learn when we're winning. We don't learn when other people tell us how to do something. We learn when we make mistakes, and we learn through the work. So I used to be frustrated that I wasn't the best at teaching myself how to do pastry. And when I went to baking and pastry school, I started to learn how to learn. So when you read articles about how someone tested a recipe 40 times and they explain it all to you, they've done all the learning. So when you come to me with a question about something, you have to have a little bit of skin in the game. You have to have tried it. You have to have failed at something. You have to have a very specific question for me to answer. Because if you preemptively come to me and say, how do I do this? Or what should I watch out for? You really need to have a little bit of knowledge. And you only get that through the actual process of doing it. And, basically in this format, I'm not teaching you, what I have learned. I am teaching you how to learn through the practice of doing all of these steps and stages, taking notes, learning to scale, making observations and predictions. And you will find that you will literally learn just like somebody does who's in pastry school. No different. The texture of the ribbon method seems to match the Starbucks lemon loaf. You know what? I've been thinking a lot about the texture of this pound cake this week. And I'll tell you first off, because a lot of you have asked, and what I do is I print off all your questions that I think have not been answered. And if you have questions and you have not watched the live, watch the repeat of the live, or watch the supplemental videos, or gone to Substack and looked up any of the supplemental paperwork, which is things like this ingredient function chart. And I'm going to be adding notes to my Substack, and these notes are specific to the pound cake, and they aren't like, long paragraphs. They're bullet points of either what percentages are, what is the ingredient function, what you do. They're simple, but then you can take this and actually keep your notes to it. So this will be on Substack. I've made this recipe now 7 times, this pound cake, and these are all my notes from the week. So I did it in the loaf pan. I did it in the little bundt pan. I mean, a lot of notes, 7 times. So the texture of this pound cake could be altered by 3 different methods of choice. You can do it like we did it, which is an egg foam, bringing the egg and sucrose to ribbon stage. Or we could do the creaming method, which is room temp butter beaten with sucrose, which adds air to it and creates a more open crumb. Or we could do the reverse creaming method, which we haven't talked about. The reverse creaming method is when you take your dries and your fats, which is weird because you take the flour and the fat and you cream them first, and the fat coats the particles of flour, which reduces gluten development. Those are 3 options, and they all give you a different texture. And I think I agree with you. The texture of this pound cake is it's tight but tender, and it's different maybe than some of the pound cakes you've had. And I am going to be doing an experiment. I don't know how long it's going to take to show you these things, so I'm going to answer some more questions and chat a bit, and then we're going to get to that. We are talking about the lemon pound cake today, and I'm going to try to read your comments, answer some questions as we go, and then if there's ever a lull, which there never is because you guys have such great questions and comments, then I'll fill in with other issues. Where did you get your knowledge? I went to, first of all, I was self-taught for years, and I had a cake business, and my husband and I invented and patented a cake decorating tool and went on QVC. And I've had products in the Neiman Marcus holiday book. I've done a lot, and I was all self-taught. At the age of 41, I went back to school, and I went to a community college in Milwaukee, MATC, hi MATC, and I got a baking and pastry arts degree, which is an associate's degree. And then I went to the French pastry school, and I got a 6-month certificate from l'art de la pâtisserie, and that is sort of an overview of everything from bread, cake decorating, pastries, viennoiserie, what else? A lot, everything. I give away a lot of the products that I make in my experimentation, and then sometimes if they're not good, I compost them, and other times they get chopped up and used for other videos, sort of demonstrating how to plate things, and how to bag them, and how to do different stuff like that. I have a lot of things behind me. I don't know if you can see this, and this is where I work in my rented, it's an apartment, but I work out of this kitchen. I have a cottage industry license, which means I can sell products, but I don't sell anything. I just make it so that I can educate and post these videos on TikTok. So I have, the cakes are back here. I have books that I want to talk about, and these are my tools. So today, and I have a list over here. I'll show you. This is my list on the wall. Can you see that? I put a dry erase paint on there so I can use my wall as a dry erase board, which is super convenient. Everything that I'm going to be doing today is not going to be eaten by anybody, but I'm going to still try to demonstrate good, safe sanitation practices. But typically when I work, I pull my hair back, I put on a headband, I stay no jewelry, no nail polish, I have short fingernails, and I try to just work as clean as I possibly can. Kaylin says, I made a lemon loaf, but the cake tastes alcoholic due to the extract and the icing is soapy. Well, that's unfortunate. I like using lemon oil or zest if I can. And, a lot of you have commented that you want more lemon flavor in everything that you do. And sometimes you can get that in different ways, but every way has its own benefits and drawbacks. There are powders you can intensify, but those have sort of an aftertaste. And I like extracts, but they do have an alcoholic aftertaste. I believe they do too. Lemon oil is a great addition because fat is a nice conduit for flavor. It really disperses the flavor very well. And in this pound cake, we added the zest to the flour, and we could have added it to the butter, but it just was, it's how I was taught to do it, and also it goes well in the flour. I think it has a lot of flavor, but then I layered in, because layering in flavor is where you bump up the flavor. I layered in the flavor by making a simple syrup that was half sucrose and half lemon juice instead of half water, and that helped, and then I added more bitters and everything. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to start my experiment and show you. And if I'm not answering your questions, I apologize. I'm going to get back to them, but I am going to start this experiment because, so to make other flavors, you want to think about layering in the flavor. So if you're going to do a vanilla, and I talked about this once, you can add vanilla bean seeds from an actual vanilla bean pod and add some vanilla paste. Lemon is going to give you the strongest flavor, and you're really just going to have to experiment. So in this recipe, we used cake flour. So what I have here are different flours, and we're going to test them. I'm going to mix these with water, and then we're going to take the ball and put it in water, and then we're going to watch how strong they are. So I have a bunch of different flours, and I kind of want to show you. Here are the notes. Pastry, cake, and just for those of you who maybe are new or who just stepping in, we're working on a lemon pound cake that I did on Wednesday. But we're working and teaching concepts about baking that will overlap into other areas of your baking. So if you are working with different flours and you don't understand if you can swap them or what impact they will have on your baking, hopefully this will help you. And you guys can all do this in your homes if you want. It's really fun to play with these kinds of experiments. And I've talked about how baking works, and while this experiment isn't from there, they have many that are very similar. These are from Cambro, these containers, and I like to keep my place is very organized. I like to keep things you know, compact and they stack nicely. These are professional. They're NSF, which is what needs to be, it's required in a commercial food place. So I try to stick to those rules. Okay, so here's what I want to show you. We use, and a lot of you ask me, can you use AP flour and then replace a portion of it with cornstarch? And the quick answer is no. If you don't have the cake flour to work on today's recipe, you know, you can use AP and then just adjust how you approach it. But you going and swapping it out and adding cornstarch is not flour. And there's no cornstarch that lives naturally in flour. So I don't really, quite frankly, I've never heard of that. A lot of the swaps that you guys do, I've never heard of them because I don't naturally want to swap things, or I'm like a rule follower, so I follow the directions the first time and I don't do a lot of swaps. However, once I started doing recipe development and learning about ingredient function, I became more curious. So I knew a long time ago that the flour that you use on your bench, even if you're making a pie, and if you've watched me work, I use Silpats and I try to use as little flour when I'm rolling things out as I can. But the bench flour that you use, even if you're making an all-purpose pie crust, is bread flour, and there's a reason for that. Bread flour has more gluten in it, which means it has fewer starches. So look, it doesn't clump. When I do this, it kind of falls apart, right? So that's what bread flour does. When you look at cake flour, so bread flour, and I write right on my containers the percent, 12.7% protein. This is cake flour. Now watch the difference, because cake flour at this brand, and it's King Arthur, is 9.4% protein. And because it has less gluten, it means that, because they look the same, they both look like flour, they take up the same amount of space, but just touching them, you can tell the difference. And watch, this is crazy. Look at how it clumps and holds together, okay? The clumping happens because with more starch, it absorbs more moisture, and the moisture lives in the air, in the humidity in the air. So if you were to use a flour that clumps more and has more moisture, it's going to get absorbed by your pie crust. Whereas the bread flour is not. So if you use bread flour on your bench when you're making bread, pies, anything that you need flour on the bench, you're going to use bread flour for that reason. So this is all purpose, and it clumps a little bit. It clumps more than the bread flour, but less than the cake flour, and it is also King Arthur at 11.7%. And then this is pastry flour. And the reason I write the number on here is because every brand is different, and I just want to know what is it. Because, you know, if you were making bread flour or deciding cake or pastry, you can go by the percentage, but there are other factors. So I always go to the manufacturer's website, I research the flour, and I think about, if I'm going to swap this, what is it going to do to my baked good? It isn't about what I have in my pantry. I won't bake. I did not, you know, I'm like you guys. I did not have cake flour. I only buy flour, and it's all called designer specialty flour, unless I need it. So I don't keep cake flour around. So I had to go to the store, and they had King Arthur. If they had only soft as silk and I had a preference, I guess I would order King Arthur or something. But instead, I went home with my King Arthur flour, and then I researched soft as silk and, what's the other one? Now I can't remember. All right, so this is fascinating. Pastry flour at 8%. You saw the cake flour at 9.4. Look at how that clumps. Almost like it's not even coming apart when I roll it around. So this has the least amount of protein and more starches. And it's not, my pastry flour is not old. I just opened this, brand new out of a bag. And that is how much it clumps, okay? The cake flour is also new, and it's this is the one we use for the lemon pound cake. It's very soft. Swans, you're right. You're right, swans. So this clumps, but not as much as the pastry flour. So we are using the cake flour, and in this recipe, We sifted it 2 times. That is because of its nature to clump. So it's an insurance policy, and that works well. So these are the flours that I am using for my little experiment here. And I'm hoping the machine's not too loud, but we are going to turn on, I'm going to, oh, I need my apron. I'm going to turn on the mixer with a dough hook, and I'm going to mix these until they come together, and then I'm going to dunk them in flour, basically. We're just going to submerge them in flour, and then we're going to watch. And you can do this at home if you're a teacher. You could do this with toddlers. It'd be great for preschool. It's really great for anybody, to be honest. So interesting. And it's interesting to me because this is the food that we eat. And the more you understand it, like the more you know what you're eating. And that way, if you're a label reader like I am, you can go and read a label anywhere and begin to dissect it and break it down. It's fascinating. Let me move these. Okay. So this is 200, what should I start with? I am going to start with the bread flour. Each one of these is 250 grams of flour and 150 grams of water. Just in general, we're not making bread, but whenever you add flour and water to your bowl on the mixer, you want to add the water first, okay? Got it. And today, some of you asked about my dishes. I have a dish bin over here so that I don't fill up my sink. It's gonna make my life a little bit easier. So which flour is the best pie crust? If you go to my pie crust, which lives on my link tree, I use, you know what? I would have to look. Maybe someone can look. I either use pastry or I use all-purpose. But then on the table, when I'm dusting the table, and pretty much across the board, everyone uses too much flour. That's why if you go watch my pie and my bread videos, you'll see that the bench flour should be bread flour, even if all-purpose or pastry is in your crust. So I'm going to add the water first, and then I'm going to add the flour so that it does not, get stuck to the bottom. And this is a small amount, so I don't know how easily it's going to come together. And we're not eating it. We're not trying to develop the gluten necessarily. We're just, mixing it until it becomes a ball. One that I have on my link tree, you can do, it's an all butter crust. You can do it either mealy or flaky because that's just mixing. I'm doing an experiment, and we are going to look at 4 different kinds of flour and how they hold up in water. And that will tell us a lot about their gluten structure. It's the pastry flour. Now that's good for you because if you tend to overwork your pie doughs, pastry flour is going to have less gluten in general, which makes for a really tender crust. If you have all-purpose, just be really careful how you work it. Just don't overwork it and don't add too much water. My favorite flour brand, I'm not tied to a favorite anything in a product. I am tied to what is it, what are the ingredients, and what kind of quality is it, and what do I need in my recipe. So the reason I didn't want actually the soft as silk or the down, is that the two of them? Is because they're both bleached. And the bleach that they use to bleach flour is different depending on the brand, but across the board, it's intended to strengthen the gluten. So King Arthur is unbleached. Now, I had some people comment that I only use bleached and I only this, and I don't say ever and only and always, because you always have to take into account things like the weather, how humid is it, what is your desired outcome, and all that. So for this cake, if you were to do your own experimenting with the lemon pound cake and you tried another one of those cake flours and it was bleached, then you would have information. And trust me, I could have tested this recipe 50 times. I only did it 7, but I could have done it a lot. So we're doing the lemon pound cake. day, we're going to talk about it, but I thought because, and again, I'm trying to teach versus just give you guys a recipe. There are a million recipes out there and they literally do you no good unless you know if it's a good recipe or what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and start the next one. This is kind of how I work, boom, boom. And I'm going to go in order, and I like to physically do things. Here, I'll show you. That's the bread flour. So what I'm going to do is put bread flour on the left, and then we're going to go to AP next, and then, there we go. So I'm going to do AP next while I knead out my little ball that I made. And this can be mixing while I get this little ball together. My dish bin down here, water goes in, flour goes in. There's nothing in here except flour and water, and that's because we're doing a flour experiment. I think this will fit. All right, so I'm gonna knead this up just so it's like smooth. If you use bread flour for a crust, like a pie crust, you would not have good luck. It wouldn't just be tougher, it would almost be inedible. If you think of gluten strands like fingers and how hard they grab onto each other, this is bread, and then pie is like there's fewer of them, so there's fewer, and then enriched doughs with butter, they're slippery. So every time that you have less, your teeth go through it more easily, and that means it's not chewy like bread, it's tender. So that's why we don't use bread flour for pie crusts. All right, let's see if this is still really big. I was hoping to make it a little smaller. All right, so I don't need to overwork this, but I'm gonna put this, and I want all the water to be the same temp pretty much, but I'm not gonna temp it out. So I'm just gonna drop that in there, like that. And you know what I'm gonna do? This will make my life easier. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put bread flour right there. And my all-purpose is coming together. So we're gonna watch what happens to this glob of flour and water. Okay, these are all my little containers. All-purpose, great. Now we're all set for our experiment. I like to be organized no matter what I do. So the cool thing about this experiment is the minute you begin to handle these like dough masses, you're going to notice things that you don't notice when you're handling one flour at a time or one recipe at a time. And did you see how a little bit longer it took the the bread to come together than it did the all-purpose? That's because it's already stickier. It's hydrated completely different. So I'm not really rounding this out or getting it smooth. I just don't want it to be shaggy. So the bread flour took a little bit longer to come together because it's not absorbing as much water as readily and quickly as the all-purpose. So I'll be interested to see how these other ones do. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to put this in water, a little water in first, water over the top. Okay, things get messy fast. So again, you always want to put the water in first when you're working with flour and water, like in a dough. Even though this is an experiment, we want to kind of keep with the same practices. All right, so that's coming together. We're doing the cake flour. And we did cake flour in this recipe to keep the crumb tender and soft, and some of the other ingredients gave us a tighter crumb than if we had done the creaming method. We would have had more open crumb, a little rougher. So this is shaggy. Get everything off the bottom. And then the last one we'll do is the pastry. And And then these can sit while we talk, so I won't be doing this the whole time, I promise. This is a lot softer. I can already feel it. And then we'll do the last one. And this time I'm not going to plop. Live and learn, live and learn. Water. I think it's important that they're the same temperature so that I don't get like warm water over one and cold over another, and that affects it. So I paid attention to that. What are you making? I'm making a flour experiment. We're adding water to 4 different kinds of flours. Bread, all-purpose, cake, and pastry. And this is cake, and I can tell it's the softest of all. Softer than even the all-purpose, and I'm going to predict that the pastry is even softer. So this is going to go into this pitcher of water, and then you can already tell that this one's getting cloudy. Can you see that? And this one isn't. It's clear and the ball is firm. This one is sticky. Okay? So I'll feel this, that's already sticky. Very interesting. All right, this is coming together. I'm gonna move these over while I knead the last one, and then I'll show you. Fascinating. The reason that I wanted to do this club is because having everyone on the same page while we're learning makes it easier for me to stay on subject, but it also makes it easier for you because the beauty of being in school in general is you're not the only one asking a question. Every time someone else asks a question or has a problem, because it's really kind of good when someone makes a mistake on a recipe, because then we all get to learn. And I think as you all interact on here together, you can begin to answer each other's questions and offer support. So I think it's a beautiful little system we've got going here, and it 1000% mimics what goes on in pastry school. Okay, this is so soft. Very, very soft. Feels really good. These all feel really good. All right, so I'm just gonna knead it a little bit smooth. It's very soft, slightly sticky. So if you happen to use all-purpose flour for your crust or pastry flour for a pie crust, you're still gonna use bread flour on the bench because it won't be absorbed by your crust, because it doesn't want to be absorbed, and I'll show you. All right, so this is my little ball of pastry flour, and I want to make sure it's not the wrong temp. Not too hot, not too cold. And I could use a thermometer if I were trying to be really exact. It's going to go in here and boom. Okay. So now that we've got this done, we can move on to the other stuff. I knew I needed to get this done right away so that we weren't doing it the entire time. We are making a bread experiment. We are not making bread, and the reason that we're doing it is to help understand how flour impacts our baking, because our lemon pound cake used cake flour. So I hope you can see these, and I'm going to leave them here as we actually, maybe I'll move them back. I'm going to make a chantilly cream for you guys. This is the bread flour. Can you see how clear it is? Clear. Nothing's happened. Things have. I shouldn't say that. This one's a lot cloudier. That's our all-purpose flour. And these are just flour and water. There's nothing else in here. This is the cake flour. It's already cloudy and it just went in. And if you felt them, you would feel that these are falling apart faster. And they're in at different times, but they'll all catch up. And this one's already cloudy and it was just mixed. So that's, to me, fascinating that the bread is clearly the clearest. You can just see. Let's do that. All right. Clean up here. So we'll keep our eye on those for fun. Okay, so here is what I'm working with today. So we've done the flour experiment. You've seen that Pastry clumps the most. It has the most starch and gathers the most moisture, then cake, then all-purpose, and then bread flour doesn't clump at all. And then we've mixed it with water and they're soaking so that we can see how gluten affects and what is being expelled into the water, because what's being dissolved in the water are the starches. So when you see them, you know that they have more starch than the higher gluten protein bread flour, if that makes sense. So the first week of the baking club was a chocolate chip cookie, then the blondie. This week is a lemon pound cake. If you missed Wednesday's demo and lecture, which is sort of where I'm doing a follow-up on right now, it's on YouTube, edited and ready to be watched, and I hope you go watch it. And you can do it anytime. You could do this in 6 months. You could print out the lemon pound cake recipe and then watch the videos and then make it yourself, and you'll still learn a ton. So I am going to be making a chantilly. I'm going to be finishing some of the lemon pound cakes so you can kind of see how you can present them, bag them, that kind of thing. I'm using a lemon from one that I zested the other day. So if you ever zest a lemon, you can either wrap it in plastic or I just store it in a container and label it with the date. Ooh, it smells so good. That way, it usually, like, I pulled this out from the cooler a couple hours ago. There was a ton of moisture in here, condensation, because there's a lot of moisture in the lemon. So it kind of holds it all in because they dry out really fast once you zest them. I'm going to use this to sift my 10X. My little cutting board. I have bags. I'm going to show you how I package everything. And then I'm going to pipe some chantilly cream onto the little bunt. And then here I have some of my stickers that I use to bag and label my products. Just even if I'm giving it to neighbors, I have a pretty ribbon that I get at wholesale. You can oftentimes go to wholesale floral suppliers and they will sell you at retail, or you'll pay tax, but you can get a larger quantity. Because if you go to the craft store and try to buy ribbon, it's really expensive and you get like a yard. So this is a good way to maximize. So I put all of my tools right here onto a tray lined with parchment. That way I can just reach and grab and it's really efficient. So let me move these. Woohoo! Okay, you're not gonna believe it. These are all the cakes. Look at all these cakes that I did this week, okay? I did 7 batches and then some of them made more than one thing. So in other words, I dialed in one of the my recipes to do 2 bunts, and I label everything with the details I need to remember when I'm testing. The date that I made it. This one was done with the Trinity bitters, and then I used a baking stone, which is really exciting because if you guys were here for the first bake, see how light that is? I'm just going to give you a preview because look at this. This was done, that's the bottom. This was done on a baking stone. So I have this lovely bottom and I'm going to cut this open. So I'm really excited. This is the bunt I made when we were on live Wednesday. It's hard as a rock and it was too dark, but I redid them and it's soft and lovely. Cannot wait to cut into this guy. And then this was one I made the day before. So I made the bunt 3 times, the loaves twice, and the mini loaves twice. Okay, so I'm going to cut all those up and show you the crumb, which is really exciting. I can't find cake flour, nor I don't use self-rising flour ever. I mean, then you can't control the baking powder. If you can't find cake flour, use all-purpose, but then don't overwork it. When you get into swapping and changing, you're doing things that are at a manufacturer's level or a recipe development level. So if you're swapping AP where you've removed a little bit of it and added cornstarch, I mean, you can do that, but you would have to dial it in. People say, well, it's just a tablespoon per cup. Well, I don't work in cups, number 1. I work in percentages and grams. And number 2, well, some recipes are 1.25 cups. So like, then what are you gonna do? So it gets dicey very quick. So if you don't have cake flour, we're talking a difference of, my cake flour is 9.4 and my AP is 11.7. Oh, the white lily flour down south, I think, is around 9%. So what you do is instead of looking at the name of the flour, the brand of the flour, look at the percentage. I am telling you right now, if you understand that difference, you are ahead. You're ahead of the game because you're not using flour based on its name. You're using it based on it's gluten inclusion. So that's what you have to think about. And there are all-purpose flours that may have less protein than some cake flour brands. And like I said, you can decide if you want to go with bleached or unbleached, but I like unbleached. Pastry flour is the same as any other flour. It just has a certain percentage. My cake flour is 9.4%, and my pastry, which is King Arthur, is 8%. And gluten's inside, it's inside the flour. You can't see it. And it really doesn't do anything until you add moisture. And the second you add moisture, these really tight, sort of messy little particles of protein, all of a sudden they start to open up and unravel, and then they go looking around for each other and they grab on and form networks. In between the networks, you'll get, in some cases, an egg foam to create a bubble. Other cases, a sugar foam to create bubbles. So that's how you begin to understand how these things all play together. So I'm going to cut these cakes in 1 second. But this is the bundt pan I use. And I don't normally buy nonstick, but this is made by Nordic Ware. And it has a little bit of a nonstick coating. But why I allowed it and bought it, it's called the Duet, and I love the shape, it's beautiful, is because it's light in color on the inside. It's not dark, because I did want to get a nice dark crust, but I didn't want a dark, I'm not going to buy a dark pan. And it's heavy, nice and heavy. And then this is my pan. And everyone's asked about it, and I'm sorry, but I can't find it in the United States. It's by Motfer, and it's a 250 by 80 millimeter pan, and I just love it. It's beautifully made. They make Pullman loaf pans like this, but they're black and a dark, I don't want a dark pan. So anyway, if you can find this, it's great. I wrap all of my pastry brushes in paper towel after I've washed them. This pastry brush is at least 10 years old. It could be older, and that's because when I carefully wash them, and I have videos under cleaning and organization on my cleaning and organization playlist on my profile page to show you how to do this. After I wash it, I straighten them out, and then I wrap it in a brand new clean paper towel that keeps everything in order, and it creates sort of an air gap so that it can dry, stays sanitary, and they look beautiful. So I have my pastry brushes, and then you can either take a digital instant read thermometer and check the inside of this cake. It should be 210 Fahrenheit, but I don't do that. I do it by touch and sight. But if you're going to use a tester, it has to be really thin. You don't want to leave a huge hole in your cake. And I sometimes use these sticks. So those are the tools, kind of interesting tools that I used. And I'm going to bring my cutting board over here. So I'm going to touch these. All right, well, this is the pastry flour. All I do is rub my hand and it actually left strands. You can see the strands. Oh, this one's very mushy, but it's not leaving as many strands. This one feels soft, but it's leaving no strands. And then the bread flour, it's like wet, but it's strong. In fact, I'll show you. You could pull it. That's just amazing. It's like a sponge. And if I do this, I probably can see some. Because gluten, it's not like you have to agitate it. Once the moisture's there, gluten starts doing what it does. That's why auto-leasing works so well. Isn't that the greatest? Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. That feels amazing. This is the all-purpose flour. It's holding together a little bit, but you can definitely squeeze out some of the starches. Cake flour is absolutely softer, and you can pull off pieces, and you can see. Those are strands of gluten. They're even like, they look like strands. And then let's look at the pastry flour, has the least amount, and look at, it'll fall apart. Look at that, just with gravity. Amazing, amazing, and it's all falling apart. So I think this is a really fun experiment, and I encourage you to do it at home, because I believe internalizing how things feel, smell, look, taste, it's all something that you have to go through. You cannot learn by watching other people. And I promise you, I'm not here trying to convince you that you need me to do these things. I am here telling you that I'm giving you the tools and the mindset to be able to figure all this out on your own, because you will play and practice with all of this stuff to the point where you're like, I get it. And then next time you look at a recipe, you're like, that's weird. Why does this pound cake have all-purpose flour, let's say? Or why does this recipe have bread flour? That's very odd. Because you're gonna know. You're gonna be gaining so much knowledge. Okay, I don't even know where to start because I have been waiting 2 days to see all this stuff. And I know a lot of you are like, how can you wait? Well, you have to. That's the rule. I'm a rule follower. You have to wait for it to develop. A couple people said, I like the spray. Other people said, I don't like butter flour. I only like butter. You can do whatever you want as long as you understand why you're choosing that thing. And I'll tell you, the spray, the baking spray, allowed the cake to rise the tallest. That is evidence-based, not my opinion, and you can take it for whatever it is. If you're going to take the time to butter and flour it, that's beautiful. It's a wonderful practice, and you get plenty of good rise. Just butter, I would not recommend. I just wouldn't, for a lot of reasons, but it's counterindicated. I use Pam spray. Well, you shouldn't have to cover your brioche if you've got it in a homemade proofer, which I have under my yeast bread playlist, because the moisture that lives inside the dough, if captured in a small enough container with a heat pad under it, releases that moisture, and it creates moisture on your bread so that it can continue to expand and not dry out. So you shouldn't need plastic. But that's a different subject. Okay, well, let's just start. And you know what? Maybe I'll show you a couple of, well, I don't have to open them all. I want to show you how these get wrapped. So this was from 3-6. So this was the one that I baked in our live, and this is the one I made the day before. So this was a big guy, and then I cut it in half. So this was the one I made with you all last Wednesday, and it feels really nice and soft. And somebody asked me about plastic wrap. I understand plastic is a problem. I get it. In some cases, plastic is a necessity with pastry. It has to be wrapped to touch for a reason, but they make compostable plastic wrap. Some people said that they just put just butter in the pan, and for pound cake, you don't want to do that. You need it to come out, number one. Number two, the butter will act as a browning agent, and when you add the flour to it, you create a barrier of sorts, not an air gap, but it absorbs a little bit of the moisture in the water and the butter, and it helps it not stick, and then you're not going to over brown the edge. Yeah, for the pound cake, I felt like the Pam allowed them to grow taller, because I did a test with the buns, and one with the butter flour mixture didn't grow as tall, and I actually dialed that recipe in to fit. Okay, so this is what we made when we were together, and I like it, but it's a little underbaked. Now, I'll tell you what, it's not a problem. It still tasted really good, and it has a beautiful crumb. Okay, that's what it looks like. Look at that. It's not too tight down here, but that is too light. And what happens when you have, this was at 320. What happens when you don't get enough heat right away, especially from the bottom, is you don't get as many bubbles here. You don't get it pushed up. The baking powder begins to react and release CO2 the minute it gets wet. And it does like 2/3 of its gas at that point. When the batter gets around 140 degrees and then higher, you get a secondary reaction in the baking powder, and that's why there's more bubbles up here. You can actually trace the life of this pound cake. So this isn't too tight, but it's not good. We need it more bubble, and hopefully we'll see more in this guy, which has a darker bottom that I made yesterday. No, I made it 2 days ago. So today, 2 days later, this should be peak flavor and texture. Okay? The way that you smell like bread and cakes is to sort of squish it a little bit to sort of release some of the aromas. And I'm gonna go ahead and just break it, because that's its natural break, and we're gonna see it's very moist. I like that. Very tender, very nice. It's really good. The interior is different than the crust. And when you're grading baked goods, you grade the crust, how thick it is, the inside crumb, how open is it? Do you have air? Do you have tunneling? Like when you see a lot of tunnels in a cake, that's not good. And I mean, with the sugar, the lemon, simple syrup. So I got nice dark on the top, but not on the bottom. All right, so that was from the other day. I'm gonna put this over here. And I'm probably going to lose track of how old everything is, but that's okay. I'm gonna get my composter. I have a composting program in my town. And when I was a teacher, I found out that composting has the biggest impact when you're talking about what packaging to use, how to handle garbage. Composting is amazing. So if you have it in your town, do it. The how and why of all of this is so important, because if you don't understand why one flour is not dissolving and the other one is, then you don't understand why a recipe developer said you needed to use that specific flour. Why? Why cake flour? Explain that to me. Okay, so this one, I made these 2 bundt cakes I made during our live on Wednesday, and I got cut off for something I said, and luckily they reinstated me. But I ended up going too long in the oven, but this was still, I think, at 320. And the other day I was like, well, it's not too problematic in terms of it being too dark. But even though I glazed this guy, it's dry, and I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna cut right in half. So that would have been the bottom of the pan, that's the top. And you can see how thick, look how thick that darkness is compared to the last one. You know, and as a teacher, this is what I used to grade. I would cut a muffin in half and I would look. How tight is it on the bottom? How open is it? How dark? Because you want dark, you just don't want too much. So we're gonna compare these because it's so fun. I just think it's so fun. So then this guy's really dark too, and the pound cake gets aged for 2 days. And honestly, the citrus intensifies in flavor and the crumb melts and it just becomes really, really nice. Okay, so these are the 2 bundt pans that I did during the live. And I know for a fact, this is the Pam spray and this is the butter and flour. And can you see a little bit of the difference between, first of all, in height? How can I do this? So this guy's just a little bit taller, just a little bit, just a little, see that? And they're just a little different, but they're both in the bundt pan next to each other. Fascinating. Different shape. Boom. There we go. Anyway, okay, so there's that. So I did this on Wednesday. And then this one was done on Thursday. And I did this at 325, but I did not use a baking stone. Okay. The bottom of this guy stuck to the glazing rack. And I dunked this one I brushed. So this one feels dry and it was darker, so it absorbed more moisture because it was thirstier. This one is nice and moist. So I'm just gonna open up one of them, but let's see. Oh, looks so good, but I know you're gonna die because the one that I think is gonna be really good is gonna be really good. All right, so this is too wet, underbaked. This was at 325, but no baking stone. So this would have been the bottom, and I do like, it's not as dark as this guy. It's not as dark as this guy, which is too much, right? Too dark. All right. So let's look at the crumb. Put that there, that's 3 to 6. So this is a little wet, a little too wet. We're gonna look at it from this is how it baked. Can you see how it's not as compressed? And I see little bubbles. That told me that at 325 versus 320, it gave it a little more oomph and allowed it to start moving upward from the bottom versus it sort of weighing itself down and then the heat hits it and then just the top lifts. Because this is a dense, heavy batter. That's why we start with the ribbon egg to lighten it. And then we add baking powder to help even more. Because pound cakes, you know, it's a dense batter. Yep. Oh, and the lemon flavor is more intense. That is so good. I can't even tell you. Delicious. I can imagine. So good. I'm not even the best because I believe these are the best. And I call these the Trinity cakes because I used the Trinity bitters in the lemon simple syrup. And I'll show you the lemon simple syrup. This is all that's left. And if you saw the video, it was in the 2-quart guy. And I don't know if you can see. There are little brown specks on here, and that is the flavoring and all the residual. And I have some notes on bitters. So this is the lemon simple syrup. It's half sucrose, half lemon juice, and then it was about 2 quarts of liquid. I added 80 dashes of this. 80 dashes, and the flavor profile is vanilla, citrus, dried fruit, and charred oak. And I thought, talk about layering, that really just layered in more flavor. Absolutely beautiful. These are all getting cloudier, but these two, this is the pastry and the cake, are actually smushing and becoming almost like sand on the bottom. This one still looks pretty firm, and that one's still a ball. So now we're going to compare a little more. This is why I think these are the best, okay? And I did. I'm so excited. You can see the bottom on these. Well, I'm going to open them, but you can see how dark. That's how it goes. Dunk, baking stone, 325. They're going to be good, okay? And I like these little loaf pans. Okay, oh, also the difference. This is my big, beautiful Motford pan, aluminum foil. I think aluminum foil needs to be baked on a baking stone. And oftentimes when I baked, I used either at work, a bread oven that has a stone bottom, so the heat's coming from underneath. I love that for a pie. And then a real oven. That's where the shelves do this. So when you put aluminum or anything on there, even though it's not a stone, they're resting on heat. When you put it in your oven, it's on a rack, the heat's going around like this, but there's no intense. And so I'm into the stone, and I'm into it for pies. I'm into it for a lot of things. I have it in my oven. I can show you. It's still in there. It's a pizza stone. I like stone. I know they make metal kind, but I only have the stone. And I like it. I like it a lot. And you have to, yours didn't get dark enough, maybe it will with a stone. You have to heat it up with the oven. So you put it in a cold oven, then heat it. Honestly, look at that. And I know you're going to say, oh, that's too dark, but I'm telling you it's not. Because compared to like this is where we started. Okay? Day 1, too dark. And then this one a little darker around the edge. And then this one's even darker. So to me, this is gorge. Absolutely beautiful. Can't wait to cut into it. And then here is the bunt. And one time I went to Grand Cayman Island and I came back with rum cakes and I thought that texture, and they're damp with a little bit of crunch. Like, to me, I just will never forget how good they were. They were rum. It was rum simple syrup. And oftentimes rum simple syrup is what they use in bakeries to dip a day-old croissant in or a day-old chocolate croissant to make almond croissants and stuff, because you do a double bake with frangipan or something. But that moistness with a little crunch of sugar with the crumb that we have here is what I had in Grand Cayman. And these are heavy. They're very moist. And I just think the color's beautiful. And I'm going to show you how to bag one of these. Nothing better than just throwing this in a plastic bag and wrapping it with a tie to make a beautiful gift. And then, okay, so we're going to cut into these. Oh, I'm so excited. All right. I always use a serrated knife to preserve the crumb. Of course I want to preserve the crumb. And I'll show you what I do for my husband. I save for him, I get a little deli cup and I put it in and I put the lid on. And the other day I took the lemon simple syrup with the Trinity and I used a spoon and I just sprinkled a little around the top edge, not the whole thing. And so then we got to talking about it, and I think this would be adorable served with one of those little pipettes. You could put this on a pretty plate with a little pipette full of the simple syrup. So the guest or your restaurant guest, or if you have a coffee shop, then they could squeeze a little amount of the simple syrup on there. So I'm gonna do that real quick so you can see. So now I don't have to do this later. I can just keep it in the deli cup. When we're all done, you can have a little. So I'll just stir up the simple syrup just a little, take just a little, and then just put it on the very top part. And we had some of this yesterday. We had some of this yesterday with our morning tea. I drink tea, he drinks coffee. And pretty much I would have put the simple syrup on the whole thing. But there, it's all sticky because I'm sticky, but this is for him and it'll keep it nice and soft. So we have a lot of fun with me, like kind of having little different samples for him to try every day. Okay, so I cut that one. I'm gonna cut the mini loaf. And then I'm gonna show you all the results. And then I am going to cut the bun. I'm so excited. You turn these around so you can see. And I will hold them up. And I soaked these a lot, okay? So here's the loaf. You can see that I have darkness, nice, and I like this, and I like this. And you can see air bubbles, so much better being on a baking stone. And in my opinion, if I were grading this, I would say the bubbles are pretty even all the way through. So that's kind of good. And then on the little guy, because these come out of the oven a lot faster, it's a little compressed here and a little damp, but not bad because aluminum does allow the heat to go through pretty easily. I like this part here. I may have soaked these a lot because I actually, to be honest, really love. And then here's my little bundt cake, but let me turn it over because this was the bottom in the oven. So do you see how, and I understand this is way too dark. We're not saying this is how we want it to look. But this was the one that I said was good, but not dark enough. So that's what we're talking, a little difference of degree. So I would choose this one. And can you see the difference in the texture of the bubbles? This one kind of goes all the way through, and this is a little tighter. Oh, this one's not bad. So I'll compare, the flavor and I'll taste them. But what I like about this one also is while I do have a nice golden color, it's golden. There's no question that that is not a nice golden bundt. What I do have is soft, delicious, tender, wonderful. So then this is the loaf. You should always use that serrated knife if you're going to serve this. Look at how it breaks and how the holes are even. It's just very, very tender looking. And then this is the mini loaf. Ooh, that's very airy. And then I'm going to do a slice. And we're going to break the bundt in half. I like eating pastry by breaking it. I cringe when people cut it with a butter knife. Look at the crumb on the interior. So soft, it's open. So it's not the same as a cake. It's more dense, but not dense in a bad way. It's tender. Yep. We had some of this from the other day yesterday, and it was good, but this is excellent. And I would eat the bottom. It doesn't bother me that it's dark. Like, it's not the bad part. It's good. Yeah, it's a little too much liquid. I think I overdid it. It's so good, though. I can't help myself. That's the interior with no syrup. Not a ton of lemon flavor, although it's there. I think that's why the syrup's so beautiful. I like the butt. This is my favorite. I mean, this whole thing is syruped. So it's going to be delicious. And I like the corner is going to be crunchy and lemony. So good. Yeah, I'm just going to have to eat all this when we're done. Yeah, I mean, the more syrup, the better, but you have to be careful. Rose Levy-Berenbaum recommends that if you're going to syrup a cake, especially like a genoise, you want to take off the crusty part on the top because it won't sink in. You want to open up so that it soaks into the crumb part, not the crust, which is different than this. But she also says you want to use a clean syringe so that you can do the right amount and you can be consistent every time, which I agree with. I brushed some of these and I dunked others, and I'm most familiar with dunking because that is the fastest way in production to get it done. You just have to be careful with the syrup that you don't overdo it so that it gets soggy. So I'm going to move these, and then I'm going to bag a couple so you can see them bagged, so you know how you can present them. Because once you unwrap these cakes, they're going to begin to dry out. So you're going to want them in a bag that keeps them tight, or you're going to want to wrap them and sell them that way. Depending on what kind of look you want to go for, packaging's expensive, but it's all something you have to think about if you have a business. If you're going to slice them, which I think I will do a couple slices so I can show you, which is often how I've done it because people want to buy a slice. And I've sold plenty of slices of banana bread and things like that. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that. And we'll go back to our flour experiment a little bit, and then I'm going to wrap these up, and then we can talk about some other stuff. Remember the other day I said my algorithm was broken? Well, guess what? It literally is fixed. You guys fixed it. My video I just did has 140,000 views. All right, I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to take my gloves off. Do the bread flour first. All right, pretty clear. That's pretty clear. Look at that. It's falling apart a tiny bit, but it's strong. You can feel it. Oh my gosh, this just feels so good. All right, so that's doing great. It's not dissolving that much. This is the all-purpose flour. Cloudy, but if you hold it, it's starting to fall, but it's not disintegrating, but it's not as strong as the bread flour. And this is really, in this experiment, you can start to see some of the gluten. And when I first started school, I remember we'd all look at it and say, I don't know what I'm looking at. What are we looking at? And I haven't done anything. I haven't agitated this really. Gluten comes together on its own. When you agitate it, you begin to build structure. These pieces, these strands of gluten, they start to arrange themselves like miracle. All right, so look at this is cloudier, and when I lift it up, it's just falling. Falling. And it's very coming off of my hands, okay? And you can squeeze it, and all of this are the starches that are coming out. The gluten is what gets left behind. So that's a lot cloudier. And then this is pastry. Woo, see? Whoa, yeah, that's huge. And it's incredibly squishy and all over my hands, okay? So it's disintegrating because it has more starch and less gluten. Alrighty, fascinating. All right, so real quick, I'm gonna do a little bagging, and then we're gonna move on. I mean, there's so much I could do I haven't even gotten to. Terrible. Bags come in different kinds, gusseted and non-gusseted, and they all have a back, which is a seam. See the seam? You want that to be in the back. And this is a gusseted bag, meaning it'll give me a flat bottom, okay? So in theory, I could put this on the bottom and then fold it a certain way. And I'll show you. This one, you always have one hand that's sticky and one that's not. That's the back seam, but there's no gusset. It's flat, see, on the bottom? So for this one, I might take a piece, and it's hard to, you got to get into a system if you're not going to make the bags all yucky. Okay, so that's going to go in, no gusset, it's just flat. And then for this guy, obviously a bump would look good in here, so let me see. And you would need a long, these are like called bread bags, and they're all gusseted, and they're not expensive. It's a poly bag bread bag. So I'm going to take, all right, so this is my nice Trinity baked on a stone at 325. And I'm going to put it in here. It's all sticky. Okay. I'm going to put it on the bottom. Yeah, it's too big for this, but you get the point. And I am going to make a chantilly cream while I finish showing you how I put these together. And these are my cakes, all my samples. I'm going to go put them over there. And I always end up getting a little, whoo, the kitchen gets warm real fast. Okay, I'm going to make a chantilly cream. My bowl and my whip have been in the refrigerator. This is 400 grams of heavy whipping cream. And I do 10% sucrose to sweeten. So I'm going to put this on the mixer. And what is is notable about the way I make whipping cream and the way I was taught by good pastry chefs is that you are going to mix it on low to medium, not medium to high, because we want to build really stable bubbles that don't dissipate the second we turn our backs. So I'm going to go ahead and start it, and then I'm going to show you my vanilla sucrose is what I grind sucrose up with all my spent vanilla bean pods. This is going to go in, and I'm going to show you actually because it's so beautiful. Look at that. You can see that's all vanilla bean. I use them and then I rinse them off and I leave them someplace warm to dry, and then I put them in the sugar, and I put all that after months and months of collecting. I put those into a food processor, grind it up and sieve it out, and I've got beautiful vanilla flavor. Okay, all the samples I send to work with my husband. We go to the farmer's market on Saturdays, and the farmers love my stuff, so I try to bring them stuff. And they trust me. And again, it's all about people trusting that you're practicing good sanitation. And, you know, when I first met them, they would take it sort of, you know, like, oh, who are you? But now they're like, thank you. And I make enough so that they can all have it. I share it with my neighbors, and I compost it if it isn't perfect. So for wrapping things, the number one issue is that everything stays clean and does not get dried out. So for this clear little poly bag, I think I will close it up tight and then just take a sticker. And I always get everything in black and white. I think it goes well with clear and with craft, and then I put it there. And so you can sell it this way. You could put the ingredients on the back, or I could close it up with something else and then put my label or my logo on the front. This guy needs to be centered. So when you bag things, you need to kind of give it a test where you lift it up and it's staying where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to take a little bit of ribbon. I don't do like a bow. I just do a pretty, you want a really sharp scissor. You want to practice, because if you pay attention to every detail, if you do any of this, I mean, even if it's a bake sale, you want to make really good money in a bake sale, then you need to make everything look clean, well thought out, and packaged nicely. So then I make sure it's all going in the right direction. I give it a little bit of a nice clean, and then I decide how high I want this to go, and you don't want to go too far, and then you do this. And so when I set this on a counter to sell it, and I can put a label on it or an ingredient label, it just looks nice. And it's giftable, and it's a good way to do it. I could tie it, well, that would look silly. So I'm going to fold it, but my goal is to keep the pound cake inside from drying out. So I'm going to do that and get a sticker. And anyway, so that would give you this. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And, you know, this pound cake can be made in very big batches, dunked, and in production be very, very fast. They last a very long time. They're very moist. If you make it, let's say you have a coffee shop or whatever, you can make the pound cake, wrap it twice in plastic and label it, and freeze it. Bring it to room temp on the counter, and then use it later. But you want to simple syrup it right out of the oven, and you want to age it, if you're going to do the 2 days, room temperature. The refrigerator is not your friend, not with baking, not with bakery, so don't use the fridge. I'm going to show you how I put it on a little cake stand. The fridge actually changes the starches. It introduces moisture, and it changes the molecular structure of the crumb, of the cake, of the starches, so they're no longer delicate and lovely. And when you age something, you're doing it at room temp because you want things to happen. You're not trying to slow down the action, you're trying to let it go. So I have this hobnail, and I have it in 3 sizes, and I have a clear glass, plain, in 3 sizes. So this little guy is really cute with the bundt cake, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this way, And then I'm going to pipe some of the chantilly cream in, and that's just a really pretty way to serve it. All right, so my whipped cream is bubbling. Turn it up just a titch. Simple syrup needs to be cold, and the cake needs to be right out of the pan, still kind of hot. So you cool it in the pan for less than 10 minutes, and then you take it and gently dunk it. And I made a video. You want to support the cake, put it in, flip it over, and then gently support it, pull it out, and put it onto a glazing rack so it drains. And then you want to cool it completely, wrap it to touch, and then store it on the countertop for 2 days. Then it'll be peak. At 3, it's okay, but at 4, it's not going to be good. All this is so sticky, it's unbelievable. I've been sticky all week. Simple syrup is just half water and half sucrose, but I did half lemon juice, half sucrose. Here is the whipping cream. I'm going to turn it down. And in fact, I'm going to show you. Yeah, it's very liquid still. So I'm just going to turn it down, because if you don't babysit something, you have to turn it down. This is my oven. I just have a home oven because I rent the apartment, and this is what it looks like. Okay, and you don't want to use harsh detergents because the stone is porous and it will absorb all those cleaning supplies, which is bad. So I just wipe it down. That is what it looks like. I bought it years ago. I do pizzas on here, my pies. Here are my flowers that are in the experiment. Those are my guys. And then the cream is starting to come together. So the baking stone is great. If you're doing a pie that's going to ooze everywhere, I just put a parchment, a half sheet tray, and another parchment. And if I'm doing like a cherry or something that I want to ooze, that will catch it, because you don't really want to get it on your pizza stone. But if it gets really, really crusted, which it does, I just get it really warm in water and I just scrub it with a non-abrasive scrubber. So this is my whipped cream. It's not coming together yet. When I went to pastry school, I learned how proper whipped cream should look. And it is not how most people think it should look. It's not firm at all. It should be a little jiggly around the edges. Yeah, I don't want to turn my back and end up with vanilla butter. One of the ways that you check to see if you have a good peak is not this. It's when you turn it over, if it holds. So that's getting close. I'm going slow. I'm going to put it in a pastry bag. I'm going to torte the bun. I'm going to show you how cute it can look. Many of you have asked how I add my pastry tips to a pastry bag, and I'm going to show you. With a lot of things in baking and pastry, they take forever to get going, but then once they get close, that's when you end up going over. It's kind of like with heat or with whipping things. So as this is getting close to being done, I need to be very careful. Okay. This is way bigger than I want to use, so what I'm going to do is cut it off where it does this. I'm just going to cut that straight across to make it a little smaller. It gets kind of unwieldy. I'm going to open it up like this. And then I'm going to take my pastry tip, and I'm just going to put it in there like that. And just push it down, and then I'm going to twist it. I'm going to take my scissor, and I'm going to go where I want it to go. This is better than cutting off the end and then finding out you cut off too much. So you just do this and you run your scissor around like that, and it comes right off. Okay? And then I take a deli cup, and I've seen people say pastry chefs don't do that. Well, that's where I learned it, so they do. And it goes in a deli cup. Put your hand in the bag and wrap it around the deli. I could have done this after, it would have been easier. Okay? When you do this, you have a really nice wipe off point. Getting very close. Very easy to stay clean. Pat a shoe, anything you're doing, boom, boom, really nice. This is a physical food safety hazard, so make sure it doesn't go back in the food. I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to look at my whipped cream, my chantilly. Still a little soft. We're going to keep going. If you are doing chantilly or whipped cream and you think, oh, I need it firmer. First of all, if you put it in the fridge, it'll firm up. But if you think you need it firmer and then you do it and you think that's perfect, take a look at it with the light on it. If it looks broken, you've gone too far. The difference between whipped cream and chantilly is chantilly sweetened. Chantilly. It's just sweetened. Because Because you can whip cream and it's plain, and then you could fold that into other things. Like you could take plain whipped cream and fold it into lemon curd, then you have lemon whipped cream, you know, you have a nice lemon cream. You can flavor it indefinitely. And one thing I like to do is to actually throw something into the cream the night before. You can do coffee, and I can do demos on that. And that's what I mean about we can layer in the learning. I can do one recipe, but there can be tons of auxiliary things going on to learn about. But you can steep coffee flavor into the cream with ground coffee and then strain it. You could do tea, you could do infusions of things, or you can add things like I'm adding vanilla, sugar. I'm gonna do it a little more. Or extracts or liqueurs, anything. Conduits, fat, it'll give you flavor, flavor, flavor. So if you are looking to up your baking game, you're gonna wanna layer flavor in, and you have to look at how can I do that. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what looks good. Can you see how it pulls away from, see that? It's like slurpy but solid. And then if you take your spoon, look at that, it's leaving an indentation, and you shake it a little, that is how it should be. It should be loose. It should be loose. Or you could put this in the refrigerator and it would firm up. However, it's gonna firm up around the edges. So this is all gonna get hard, and then this will get firm last. So you can either put it in the fridge and every now and then scrape the edges, or my kitchen's pretty cold, so it's gonna firm up. All right, so we're really close to being done. So there's like a soft peak. See? It doesn't need to be crazy tough. Just like that. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And delicious. All right. You could actually put a little bit of bitters into the whipped cream before you start whipping it. I wouldn't add it now because it won't incorporate. There's plenty of really good ice cream companies that are going to steep flavor in. Absolutely. If I put this in the refrigerator, or if I move it to a deli cup and it gets firm every morning, and this can go in your coffee, like it's great. So good. So yeah, bitters are my new best friend. In fact, you can help me do a little bit of flavor work here. If I were to have added, would I add to the whipped cream that's going to be with this? I'm going to slice this, put it on a cake stand, pipe some pretty chantilly cream. Would you have added the citrus dried fruit vanilla flavor? That's a good one. That's the Trinity. There's one that's birch, sarsaparilla, wintergreen, chocolate, coffee, pepper, cocoa, fennel, vanilla. I mean, with the lemon, maybe. Chamomile, cinnamon, and jasmine, that would be good. Caraway, cardamom, coriander, allspice, pepper, ginger. Okay, here's a good one. Grapefruit, hibiscus, island flavors, and then this one is cinnamon, cola nut, and nutmeg. So I think the Trinity goes really nice with the vanilla. And one way to know about that kind of stuff is, are those ingredients grown in the same part of the world? Are they, you know, compatible in nature? Because if they are, then you're probably doing you're doing a good flavor pairing. Yeah, they do sound like they'd be good. Okay, so I'm gonna put just a little bit of the whipped cream right onto, oops, bad on me. This is off. I had the bag in the on position. I'm gonna put just a little whipped cream so it holds the cake, and then I'm going to twist this and place it in the deli cup, and that is a holder. See that? All right, so I'm not gonna cut the cake on the stand. Now this knife has been used to cut those, so it has stuff all over it, and that's gonna be bad on my cake. I'm gonna rinse off the knife so there's no drag. If you use a chef's knife, you're just gonna smush all the beautiful crumb. Okay, so I'm going to take this knife. Okay, I'm not gonna do this right in half. Things look good when they're off a little bit, so I'm gonna go just a third under the top. And I'm going to slide this back and forth as I turn it so I can get a really nice cut. Even for a moment, you should get out of the habit of putting knives in the sink. So this is one part, and I want these to stay together. You guys have often asked me, why do I use a toothpick? And that's because I don't want to take the top and put it on that way. I want it all to look really good. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to press it down onto that whipped cream. The whipped cream is just there to hold it down. And then I'm going to take the top off, but I'm going to keep it in that orientation. or I would add a little toothpick to keep that side. So I'm gonna grab the whipping cream, the chantilly. I overfilled this, which is always mine. I may not be able to get a nice, no, I can. So I want to get a little bit of the, so that you can see a little bit of the star impression, but this is a little soft. I'm not doing a good job, but it's a little soft, but that's okay. And then we're gonna put that on there. You don't need to press it down. So I would have gone a little firmer, just so you know. And then I'm gonna put a little on the top. And then you can take this and, you know, you can do little rosettes. You can do whatever you want. And I could take a little sucre or something and tap it on the top, but I didn't get any ready. And then, isn't that the cutest? It's a little off center. Cute, 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 and it's not even perfect. If I were selling this, I clearly would have dialed everything in, but I'm not. All right, let me get some berries. I have some blueberries that I already washed, and if you want, you can decide to add them in and make them look pretty, or I could just add them to the plate, okay? So then I would take my knife in a sawing motion. Yeah, the whipped cream should be firmer. And I'm going to put this on a plate, and then I'm going to add berries there, and a fork, and a napkin, ready to go. So it's just a nice little pound cake. You can do a million things with a pound cake, but this pairs really well with blueberry. And the chantilly. I mean, if you have candied lemon or something to add a little crunch, even a sprinkle of raw sugar, you want to get 3 to 4 different textures, colors, flavors, temperatures, experiences in a dessert. So if I were making this into a dessert, I would think it through just a little more, maybe a little lemon curd, maybe a lemon sorbet. It's delicious, and that's it. That's lemon pound cake. Easy peasy, right? I just make it look so fast. And that's why waiting 2 days is not terrible. Yes, the multiple texture. If you have the flavor Bible, you look up a flavor. So we would look up lemon. That's our main flavor. And under there, anything that went with it, we'd be like, oh, lemon, blueberry, vanilla, raspberry, and that adds another color. Any fruit, kiwi would be beautiful with the lemon. But I just think not only is it charming and very old-fashioned, but the nuance of all the little details that I paid attention to, I swear to you, you can taste it, and the people who eat your stuff, they'll know. And the blueberries are tart, which I love. We're gonna move on to phase 2 of this situation. Not phase 2, I've been on here for 2 hours. So here's what's gonna happen. You guys worked a miracle with watching the videos and kind of bringing life back to the situation. And what I would like to ask you is this what you want? Do you want me to do these recipes and teach the whole thing and not really be engaging with all the comments because I'm in the middle of, doing the demo? It's very hard for me, and I've worked for years to focus on my work. And if we were in person, I'd have no trouble doing the demo. But with this situation, when you're not, there's no verbal exchange. Like in class, you would just ask a question. So if that's what you want me to do, I can give you for free, other than, you guys engaging with my videos and making TikTok know that I'm here. I can give you exactly the same thing I got in pastry school and the same thing that I gave people. All right, let me do these books real quick. I want to tell you, I've read we've made a lot of changes in our life, and I've been sleeping much better, and I've been reading at night, okay? I don't do my phone anymore. And these are all the books I've read since January, except for this one, okay? These are all memoirs, and I'm going to tell you from bottom to top what I like, okay? Real quick. I read Ruth Reichel's memoir, okay? I read Crying in H Mart. I read Killing It by Camus Davis. I read Ina's in January. And I read this the other day. I just finished Blood, Bones, and Butter. And then I'm reading Rebel Chef by Dominique Crenn. And basically that was in the order in which I love them. And they're all good and interesting. But this one is written incredibly. She's an incredible writer with an MFA in writing. And then my fave, you all know how much I love Lane Regan. And they are working on their third book. But this book was shortlisted for the National Book Award. It's incredibly well written. So while these are really good stories, these two are the ones that are actually, you know, a writer's book. And they're very, very good. And then very quickly, and then I swear to you, I have no other props to give you, okay? I wanted to encourage all of you because you all ask me for book recommendations. And when I tell you, I want you to think differently, okay? Your books, just like I tell you, reading an article where someone else has done all the testing, all of the putting together, and all you're doing is reading it, I promise you, you're not really learning. You're listening and you're taking it in. But mostly what I do is I go to these textbooks, and then if I'm doing any recipe from a chef, let's say it's a lemon pound cake from Ina or from Stella Parks or whoever, I'm going to go look at their recipe, read the head notes, and cross-check everything. But I'm not getting information from other people's analysis. I'm learning. I'm making the analysis, and this is how I do it. Okay? This is a goofy textbook. A lot of teachers hate using textbooks in baking schools, but I'm so familiar with this book from teaching it for over 12 years that I like this Wayne Gislin, and you can get any edition used or whatever. And I marked a couple things, and I'll tell you why I like it. There's a million reasons I like a textbook, but like here, standards for qualities of pies. I love these charts right here. It says like what went wrong and then what could be a cause. The dough is too stiff, not enough liquid, okay? And it's got a whole thing. So you can, questions for review, words that you need to know. This is all about scaling the amount into the pan, which is so interesting. So you can kind of start to eyeball all your recipes and make them fit. And then common cake faults and their causes. So this is you can see the chart. That's just a chart. But like volume and shape, you have poor volume. It could mean too little flour, too much liquid, oven too hot. And you get to take what happened to you in your recipe, in your home, in your oven, and come here and say, ooh, my crust came out too dark. But I baked it at the right temp, and I did everything else the same. But I changed the recipe, and I added too much sugar. That caused it to be too dark. It's fascinating. Okay? And here's the last thing I'm going to say. In the bibliography, this is where you want to get your books. Not from the top 20 books of the year or from a fly-by-night recipe developer. You want to look here and say, who are they getting their information from? So the bibliography is always a great place to go for pretty much any reference book. But in here, Dominique Crenn's in here. There's a bunch of people in here. But these are the top books that are definitely in there that they use in their textbook to get their information to teach. Bread, Jeffrey Hamelman. Chocolate and Confections by the Culinary Institute of America. And Professional Cake Decorating by Toba Garrett. And I never recommend cake decorating books because they're really just visual aids. But this one, you could build a cake decorating business on. High ratio cakes, wonderful buttercreams in big batches, scaled, beautiful. So I recommend those books, and that is why I recommend them. Let me get my papers and my pen. And that's it. I'm done with show and tell, and we move on. I hope you guys learned something from that flour demo, because I absolutely love that demo. I think it's so fun to do, and it's so informative. All right. What was the first book? It's called Professional Baking by Wayne Gislin, Gisslen, and it's made by Wiley Publishing. My favorite books are all in a PDF on my Linktree, and these are all beginner playlists. Everything I do, I would hand to you on the first day of pastry school because it's about getting acclimated to the ingredients, the space, the processes, and that kind of stuff. So all these books that I just mentioned they're on my Linktree. The library at the CIA, so not the library, the bookstore. So you go pretend like you're gonna buy and you look up what they're recommending or what they're requiring of their students to buy. Because then maybe those are books you want to get. And then you can go cross-reference it on wherever you buy your books. All right, I was going to get the poll up, and here's what I need to ask you. We need to choose a recipe for next week. I think that we should build on the concepts, and we can do that a couple different ways. So if you guys can tell me kind of what you want, then I am going to put up a poll with 3 options, and then that's what we're doing next week. And I will build the entire week around that recipe and every video. So I'm not going to give you all the information in one place ever again. Since TikTok shut down, I diversify. You can get the written stuff for support on Substack. You can get the repeats of this on YouTube, and you can get the lives here. And then I fill in every single day. I post 1 video. This live is available in parts 1 and 2 on YouTube. And they're under the PoP Baking Club, the Practice of Pastry Baking Club. Wednesday demo lecture, Sunday additional experiments, conversation, extrapolation of the concepts, and reinforcing what you need to focus on. Because now that you know more about your flours, I expect you will be able to answer the question, well, why is cake flour in this? Why is there pastry flour in my cake or AP flour in my biscuits? Why is bread flour in my cookie? These are questions you're going to be able to answer on your own. All right, Dave, so we're going to do 3 buttercreams as one choice, pâte à choux with a crumb as the other, and then our third could be a one-off like a creme brulee or I do a chocolate lava cake that's really good. Creme brulee with other creams. If I do creme brulee, that's enough. I'm really good at staging information and kind of knowing internally. I have a good internal clock. Creme brulee is enough for 1 week. It sounds like it's not, but I have so much cool information. It's really, really good. All right, French and Russian. I've never done a Russian unless I look it up, and I have to look it up. French, Italian, Swiss, and then American. But that's more than 3, but I'll see what I can do. Oh, I gotcha. The Practice of Pastry or the PoP Baking Club. And you can just Google Chef Kathleen, Practice of Pastry. It'll come up. And this baking club you guys invented. Russian is made with sweetened condensed milk. Okay. So I'm going to do the poll now. We're going to add the poll and you guys are going to vote. All right. Thank you, Dave. My husband did this. We are set for, as far as I understand, 15 minutes. So vote away and you're going to pick the recipe we do next week. And I really am asking you to watch every video that has to do with the recipe we pick so that you can either, it's like interactive. Let's say that I post a video on Monday night and then you all have a question. I can literally answer that question the next day in the next day's video. So we can remove that this is the internet. Like we can make this super interactive just by you. Yes, I would love to do a cake one where we do the high ratio, which is a reverse creaming method, and then like a chiffon and show you all the different ways of building cakes. So that's what I'm liking. We're going to take a theme and then extrapolate it out over 1 to 3 recipes so that you can start to make connections between the ingredients, the equipment, and the processes. Because I could sit here and talk till I'm blue in the face. You're not going to learn a thing. You're going to learn it when you begin to do it and internalize it yourselves. Everybody vote. The shoe class is going to be when you guys vote for it. I teach every Wednesday and Sunday. Wednesday at 6 p.m. This is pastry, cake, AP, and that is, this is the bread. And I'll go ahead and just show you. It's so messy. This is bread flour. It's the highest percentage of protein, and it's just now starting to fall apart. This is all-purpose, and it's much softer, and all of this that's in there is the starch in the water. This is cake flour, which is lower in protein, and it's just going to fall apart. Woo, okay? And then the least amount of protein is this one. And it's all mushy and falling apart. I mean, it looks like you picked the 3 buttercreams. Barely, 53.85% to 46.15. 3 buttercreams. I mean, I'm super excited. That is great. 3 buttercreams. Okay, so we're doing the buttercreams, and then next Sunday, you will pick the recipe for the next week. So I want you all to be thinking about what concepts do you want to learn? What do you want out of this? I literally do not care. I've been teaching for so long. It's not like I want to teach you something or I'm trying to impart something on you. I want you guys to understand that these concepts go together, and then we can layer in and you can learn a ton. So let me tell you just a real couple. Some of the questions I got, one was about from Daily Cleanse with Celeste, was about there being alcohol and sugar in bitters. If you go to the Bitter Cube website where I get my bitters, there are Q&As. These are all handmade. By law, it's less than 1% liquor. You can't drink this. It's not potable. And the only sugars that live in there are naturally occurring in fruit, or they're a little bit of burnt sugar. I have a question from Saturate the Colors about wrapping the cake. I've seen a lot of people wrap their cakes and always wondered if the cake should be cool to room temp or wrap while it's warm. You do not want to wrap cakes, and I know a lot of people do this on the internet, but you don't want to wrap them while they're warm. The evaporation of moisture at the end of cooling, at the end of your cake cooling, is a stage of baking. And you need to evaporate all the moisture and then wrap it and get it in the freezer or whatever you're going to do with it. Or leave it on the countertop if you're going to be using it tomorrow. You don't want to lock in heat. You just want to keep the moisture from escaping. Yeah, the buttercreams are the winner. Mary said, can you teach us how to make a genoise? Mine never rises. That could be one of the cake days that we do. So we're going to do buttercreams, and maybe we do a cake day where we do a high ratio and a genoise. We can do those back to back. You age your pound cake on the counter or the fridge? Well, now you guys can answer that. You know, not the fridge ever. The refrigerator, the cooler, changes the molecular structure of the starches. And that's why when you put bread in the refrigerator, the only way it's edible is if you toast it or reheat it, because you have to actually dry those starches back out. That's why it's best to wrap it tight and freeze it and then refresh it in the oven. The fridge just changes it. It's not comparable to the freezer or the countertop. It's degradation. Just think of it as bad. Is there an alternative to cake flour, or can I use AP flour and cornstarch? I've already answered that in terms of I don't like swaps. You're not a manufacturer of flour, and unless you're a recipe developer, you're just playing with fire. Use AP, but be very careful you don't overwork the gluten. Or like I said, white lily flour has 9% protein, and my cake flour has 9.4%. That's pretty close. Theirs is bleached, but then that's a whole nother story. Can the method on this recipe be swapped on the lemon pound cake? Could I use this for the creaming method where you cream the butter and sugars, alternating dries in the eggs? Or the muffin method? No. The lemon pound cake that we just made was formulated for the ribbon eggs. That's it. If you began to change the method, you would have to look for a different recipe. But just know it is. And then if you want to, do it and see. Do it and see. M. Park said Claire Saffitz updated her Forever Brownie. And I was like, I read where she said she was done. That's why it's forever. But I can't get the video on YouTube yet. So as soon as I can, if she's updated that recipe like I think she has, I'm going to make them back to back, the old one and the new one. And that might be fun to do. Our Lady of Chaco, she said, I'm sad I'm missing the live today. If you have any thoughts on how to adapt this to a muffin pan, I'd love to hear it. So she's asking, can we take the lemon pound cake and put it in a muffin tin. Yes, you can. This lemon pound cake can literally go in any kind of size or shape, but you don't want muffin liners. You want to do metal. Just like if you had a metal pan that you spray or you butter flour, do the same thing to the muffin pan. And they'll look like muffins and it won't be super, attractive, but you can make them small and then you can finish them off that way. Okay, so I had an email from another viewer who mentioned, I mentioned curriculum and all this kind of stuff. A first semester baking student is going to learn basic ingredients, the creaming method, the muffin method, some basic instant yeast bread doughs, bars, basic concepts. You guys are literally there and ahead. But even if you're way ahead and you've done really complex stuff, I just ask that you open up your mind a little bit. Don't jump to conclusions or preconceive the answer. Try to get into a learning mindset. Because imagine, I went to the French pastry school and to MATC, Baking and Pastry Arts program, after being in the industry. I was 41, so I'd been in since 15. After being in baking for 18 years. So I could have shown up and been like, I've done that, I know that, or, oh yeah, I know, and I do this, and I never do that. Or I can show up with my pen and paper like I did. Tell me more. Tell me more. And then I made connections, and then I would ask. And I remember when I was at French Pastry, my instructor, who was an MOF, who was one of the founders, Chef Sebastian, he went like that to me. And I was like, what is that? And he touched and he said, you're making connections. And it was a wonderful physical reminder that I wasn't there to learn necessarily even more than I already knew. I was there to learn how to think like a baker, how to make connections, and how to think like an ingredient, and know that every time that ingredient goes into a different formula, even if it's got the same name, pound cake, it's got different formulas, different methods, different outcomes. I need to think, and then I understand better. So that's what I'm asking you guys to do. Come, I will share everything I know. You know I don't gatekeep. You know that I want you all to learn and watch the process. And I don't know, this is in your control. This entire baking club could be the biggest thing. I mean, it's really, I taught at 3 different schools, and there were a lot of people there making a lot of sacrifices to get to school, working nights, having their kids be brought home from school by other people or dropped off at school. People were doing everything they could to get to school. And I am doing exactly the same work here on TikTok and on YouTube and on Substack. So just remember, Substack's all the written stuff and some complimentary videos, YouTube's repeats, and TikTok's live, and then up-to-date videos on the subject. So it's really fun, but we can do this, and I don't know, we're bumping up on, how long has it been? 2.5 hours we've been here. Crazy. All right, what else do you have? Do you have any tips for freshly milled flour from wheat berries? My tip for that is, obviously they have not been aged or oxidized. That's what happens with the flour we buy, like from King Arthur. It's been aged to the point where the moisture content's stable. So I like flour like that. Definitely, if you're buying local flours that have just been milled, or you're milling it yourself, like grinding it, you're gonna have more solids, more ingredients from the whole wheat berry than like an all-purpose or one that's been processed the way we do commercially. And you're going to have different moisture content. So that's great for like a lot of stuff, but it's going to change the flavor and how it behaves. So you're just going to have to test it, but it sounds delicious. And it's really great that there's more wheat being grown at the local level. All right, well, what didn't we cover? We're doing the 3 buttercreams, and I'm going to pick the most 3 that will kind of fill in a lot of gaps. I think 1 will be the American, 1 will be a European, 2 will be a European. Maybe I'll throw in an extra one, but I'll only demo 2. Like, we could do that. I really think it'd be great to demo the Italian, because the Italian is also used for the macaron, which if you guys all did the Italian, then I can we could layer that in. I could do the macaroons sooner than I thought. Ooh. I mean, if you can buy fresh, locally grown wheat berries and make your own, just remember some are soft wheat, some are hard wheat. Could we add freeze-dried fruit as one of the flavors? Let me write that down. Freeze-dried fruit. Flavor. Yeah. I would love it if you structure this as if you were in teaching so we can build on skills. Well, that is what I'm doing. I just want to make sure you guys are all, if 10 of you like it and 1,000 people don't, that's not going to work. So just like when we test a recipe to be sold, is it sellable? It needs to be 90% of the people need to be on board. I never use margarine. I just have no need to unless I'm making something vegan, and you're going to have to add something to round out the flavor because you're going to lose the flavor. But for a lot of vegans, obviously margarine's the way to go. So you just need to balance the flavor because you're never going to get that rich flavor like you do from regular butter. Okay. So I am going to go on a hike with my husband and my dog. Thank you, Dave, for being our moderator, and we're working out the kinks. I mean, I feel like I was at school. Demo days were always really exciting and tiring and fun, but all I want you to do is to take something away that you can put in your back pocket and nobody can take away from you. Like, you get it, you know it now, it's in there, and you own it. So we are going to do 3 buttercreams. I hope I don't disappoint you. If you have any thoughts or ideas as I release the recipes, please DM or comment on one of the videos. Yeah, and I get a lot, so keep it as brief as you can, and that's it. I mean, I'm super excited you're all here. The PoP Baking Club is alive and well. This was week 3. 3rd recipe. Week 4 is next week. We're doing 3 buttercreams, American buttercream and 2 European buttercreams with all kinds of variations and information for you to take with you. And then maybe the next week we'll do a high ratio cake and a sponge cake. Maybe we'll look at the differences there. But if you miss this ever, just jump on board to YouTube, watch the review, go to Substack, and get all of my documentation. You've got ingredient function, and now this is a whole new thing, notes. These are all my nutshelled bullet point notes. You print this out and then you can just keep your own notes. Very helpful, but I don't really get that done until I'm done with all my testing. And then I'm making videos on TikTok that if you miss them and you have a question, I'll be like, go back and watch the video. Because a lot of people ask about the simple syrup and I'm like, I made the video. So these videos, I've done all of this on my TikTok, and going into a deep dive on the subject, on buttercreams or whatever, is going to give you a head start on Wednesday. So I'll see you all on Wednesday. Can you touch on adding cream cheese to your Euro? I've never added cream cheese to Euro buttercream, but I can promise you I'm going to look it up. Adding cream cheese. It's an international community of people, and we all speak the same language, which is baking. People send me recipes in Spanish. I get it. I can read them, and I don't read Spanish. I have French books, and even though I've taken French, I don't need a translator, because the ingredients are them and the methods are what they are. And I work in Celsius quite often, just not with the oven. So I'm going to be using the Professional Cake Decorating book by Toba Garrett. If you can get it at your library, or if you're interested in buying it, or if you run a cake company, I recommend you buy it. And it's going to give us a lot to work with. Yeah, a lot. I don't know if the editions change much on the Toba Garrett. It's by Wiley Publishing. This is the 2nd edition, so I'll look, but if you get the 2nd, you're up to speed with me. And these textbooks are not cheap, so you need to find them through alternative ways. Thank you for staying the longest ever in Alive. I love it. I love you guys. You are all, I swear to God, the best audience because you keep me on my toes. You're so smart. And I know that this is a good way to do this. And we just need to dial it in together. And I can't do it alone. Like, I can give you these classes, but you are the ones who are actually influencing the algorithm. And I'm old. I don't know. What do I know about an algorithm? But I do know it is run by numbers and likes and shares and comments and all that. And you know what? If the only thing that happens is my lives become very big, TikTok will come in and do what it does. So we're good. When you cool a cake, like the pound cake, lemon pound cake, take it out less than 10 minutes. It's gonna start to pull away from the sides, and that's where you wanna get it out so the moisture doesn't get re-injected into the cake. And that's when you're gonna dip it, but you don't wrap it until there's no moisture. And if you wrap it and it gets warm at all, you need to take the wrapping off and wait. But you don't wanna wait so long that it's cool and drying out. So there's a sweet spot and an edge, and you need to find it. All right, you guys, I'm gonna go have a Sunday, and thank you. See you on Wednesday. Look for the recipes. They're going to be on my link tree as soon as I can get them there. I don't know what else to say. You guys are amazing. Yes, I will look up the thing is the vanilla cake. Oh my, you're funny. I'm not going to promise that I can get it up quick, but I'm going to look for it. It's going to come down to a question of, can I translate it quickly and get it up? Okay. Because if I have to translate it in any way, it's going to take me a minute, and I want to focus on what we're working on because I have a lot to do. I have to edit this video. I have to get the 3 recipes, decide what they are, change them, get them up, and then start making them so I can get those videos up and then meet you here on Wednesday. Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be here making 3 different buttercreams, and I'll be giving lots of information. Read up on whatever I post on Substack, YouTube, or here, and then meet me on Wednesday with a pen and a paper, take notes, and then whichever recipe you're interested in, make, because when you come back on Sunday, you're going to have questions, and I'm going to be here to answer. And then I'm using a mixer. You can use a hand mixer, but it's going to just take a lot longer, and you might not get the same results. We're going to need a heavy bottomed pan, stainless steel, and you're going to need, I'm going to use glucose syrup, and I will give you options, but if you can find glucose syrup, it is not Caro syrup, it's not Trimoline, and it's not an invert syrup. So glucose syrup, they sell online in lots of places in low quantity. But that's going to be one of the recipes because I'm going to explain to you why it's important. Okay, on the vanilla cake, I know, and it's this lady I know who gave it to me, so I'm thinking it's in like not a good usable form, but I have a feeling like even if I gave it to you in ounces or something or cups, you'd be okay with it, is how I'm feeling. Okay. All righty, I'm gonna go. Thank you so much, bakers. The PoP Baking Club is in full force, and it's amazing. And I think this could be like the first of its kind, I swear to you. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've done a little research. I know, I love grams too. All right, thank you. Happy Sunday. See you Wednesday at 6. Take care of yourselves. Happy baking. See you soon.